Hello, and welcome back to Ice and Fire, Part 6, Part 3. Now, this video we're going to be going over and fighting all the different mobs in Ice and Fire mod. Now, annoyingly, this obsidian box is required for battling most of these because of how destructive they are, and YouTube compression is going to be really annoying with it. So anyway, let's start off with the Gorgon. We're going to need a blindfold, and just some regular diamond armor for this sort of battle. It's not so hard when you have a blindfold on, although when you do, it's pretty hard battling it when you can't really directly look at its eyes. Okay, so I have it on and I'm battling the Gorgon. It only has about 100 health, but it gives you poison whenever you're attacking it with a blindfold. So you should always have quite a bit of healing for battling some of these mobs. This one isn't one of the more harder mobs. Most of the dragons are definitely stronger sort of mobs in this mod pack. So when killed, it drops that kind of weird body and a head. We'll be using the head later on. Okay, so next up we have is the Dread Knight. Now the Dread Knight is one of the dreaded characters or entities, and is really slow, as you can see here, but it has a whole lot of health and can deal a decent amount of damage even with full diamond. So if you stay a decent way away, it shouldn't be too hard to battle. Let me just quickly battle it, and so it drops iron and bones, and also dreaded shards if you ever kill enough of them. Next up we have sirens, where you normally have earplugs to counteract their singing ability. This is it. So you can move back, but it's really hard to do so, and it takes quite a bit of time to try and go away from them. They aren't that strong when you actually fight them, but they do come in 3, and if you don't have any proper armor on, or if you're in RL craft, it can be pretty hard battling some of these mobs. Okay, now we have is the Hippocampus, which is a sea horse, basically. It doesn't attack back, and it's a peaceful mob that can be ridden. It drops shiny scales occasionally, and is a good alternative, a peaceful alternative to sirens. Next up we have is the Hydra, which definitely needs some better armor for battling, due to its strong attacks and fast regeneration. So we just put all this back onto the armor stand, and I'll take the dragon bone sword and flint and steel. Okay, so for this one you should really try and attack it with fire, which is the only real way of attacking it properly. If you don't, you can't really do any massive amounts of damage to it, or decent enough that it will actually die eventually. It gives you poison, and if you don't kill it properly, it will keep on growing heads, which will attack simultaneously if you don't properly kill it. When you set it on fire, it doesn't regenerate properly, and so you can try and attack it. So this is why you have to have a dragon bone sword or a flint and steel when fighting the Hydra. They normally spawn in swamp biomes and are pretty rare to find whenever you go into them. Although their loot is pretty bad, what they actually drop is pretty good, being a Hydra heart and its fangs. I'm just gonna sleep on night. Okay, so the next mob we're gonna be battling is the Amphiphere. I doubt I said that correctly. And with this one, you're most likely gonna need a sword and a bow for this one. So I'll be using a dragon bone bow and some harming 2 arrows for this one. Alright, the bow doesn't work sometimes, so it might be a little glitchy. Normally they fly quite a bit, but whenever they're on the ground like this, you should always try and hit them with a sword. The way you kill them is by shooting them down with a bow, and then hitting them when they're down. Similar to, well, another sort of character in the Mouse's mobs, which is in another video I've made. So I've just changed the bow now so I can attack it more easy here. Okay, so I'm gonna just be trying to battle it here. I'm really bad with a bow, so I'm not gonna be hitting it all the time. So when you finally hit it down, you can then attack it with a sword. It doesn't do much damage, but if you have this sort of armor on. Okay, so let me just get back to the area over here. And so the next one is the Dread Ghoul. This is a much faster version of the Dread Knight, but is much weaker. As you can see, I do about 3 hearts of damage when hitting it with a diamond sword. It also like trying to bring you forwards towards it whenever attacking it. See how it moved the armor stand. So now we have this Hippogriff. Now, they don't really attack you unless you attack them or if you startle them. They hit you really far away whenever you attack them, so it's best to use a bow whenever fighting them because they can sometimes be in the air. They're not the strongest mob, but they are a decent struggle whenever you're just starting off in a world with this mod in. Now the Troll can only really be fought in the night due to it turning to stone when in daylight. So let's spawn the Cockatrice. Now, you don't want to look directly at it. If you ever look into its eye, you get withered. So you should always try and like stay away from looking at it. It also gives you like some other bad effects like nausea, which makes it harder to fight the mob when attacking it in the savannah. Although using a bow is one of the best ways of fighting it, it's hard to actually take a hit on it because of the nausea. Unlike, well, that time when I killed it. But it's much more harder to battle whenever because of the nausea that it gives. Okay, so it's still not night, so I'll just be doing the Dread Lich and the Dread Thrath before doing the Cave Troll. Now the Dread Thrath is a much more harder like creature and is mainly almost like a boss, although not having a boss bar at the top, since how it like spawns in numerous dreaded creatures, it's more harder to kill. And so I'll just be eventually just showing how to actually battle it after. So I might like stop battling it for or show you just the ending after a little bit because of how long this battle normally takes. So when fighting it, you should always try and attack the actual creature itself, not the creatures attacking you, which is hard, especially when they're constantly hitting you much faster than you can actually attack, such as with the dreaded beast. It also attacks itself when the actual entity actually attacks you with a scepter most of the time, which it drops occasionally whenever killing it. Well, the sun isn't down yet, so I guess we'll do the Dread Thrath. It's also slow, similar to the Dread Knight, but much weaker. As you can see, it died in about a few hits. Now we have is the Deathworm. They come in numerous sizes, which this one isn't really the biggest one, and they drop chitin, which is used for armor. They're always found in the desert and can be found whenever you have like a weird sand dune kind of thing. Okay, I guess we're not fighting this Definian bird then. Don't know why it didn't spawn in properly. But they're not really that hard, they normally spawn in groups, so it's best to fight them with a sword. Now we have the Sea Serpent. The Sea Serpent can insta-kill you whenever doing a specific attack, but is normally much harder to kill when in the water. As you can actually see, the only thing that's really doing damage to me is my own arrow. When it's on land, it's much weaker than it normally is, mainly because, well, fighting on land is much easier for the player than for the Sea Serpent. It's going to be removing these extra parts of absorption. Okay, so next up we have is the Myrmec and Royale and the Cyclops. The Myrmec's Royal has wings and is quite strong compared to most of the other Myrmecs. It's not a boss like the Myrmec's Queen, but it's still a much harder fight than most of the other ones. Now I'm going to be taking off this armor and putting on the sheep disguise for the Cyclops. The sheep disguise allows you to walk around in the area and take the loot, but it doesn't actually save you from the actual Cyclops itself. So I'll just be attacking it with a bow. It attacks the most closest entity that isn't a sheep, so even armor stands, as you can see here. But when you attack it, even with the sheep disguise, it does attack back. So you should always be wary whenever fighting it. Okay, ignore that death. So this time I'll just be battling him normally. So he does quite a bit of damage, so you might want to actually swap out your armor when fighting him, because the sheep disguise only works for trying to get the loot, which isn't even that great. So let me just try and defeat the Cyclops. I'll put on this Dragon Steel armor when I get the chance. Okay, so I should be able to finally fight him if I... Okay, so he's a much harder opponent, being equivalent to about a dragon sort of scale. although you can cheese the match in his dungeon. He doesn't drop that great of stuff, with the most best things being the skull and the eye that he drops on a rare occasion. So let's go for the Dread Scuttler, the Dread Beast, and the Myrmex Queen next. Now, the Dread Beast you might have saw before when I was battling like one of the other dreaded mobs, and it does quite a bit of damage and is really fast, much faster than the player is, and attacks at a further reach than the player can actually attack. The Dread Scuttler is a giant spider, as you saw, same with the Dread Beast. It's not as strong as the Dread Beast, and is still pretty fast. Now we have the Myrmex Queen. Okay, I guess it's not really supposed to do that. Well, I guess it's not that hard. It's basically the Myrmex Royal with a little bit of extra health. Okay, so now we have the Myrmex Soldier, the Pixie, and then we're gonna go on to the two dragon types. The Pixie takes one slot of an item, and in this case it took my golden apples. They're not that hard to kill, but they are pretty annoying when you find a fairy village. You can tame them with cake and put them in jars, so they aren't that hard of a mob to battle, unless they take your sword or your armor. Actually, let's go for the troll now, because it's night. So the troll does quite a bit of damage with its weapon, but it's also really weak to the sun, and, like, just the weapons in the mod. It's basically completely immune to arrows, so you shouldn't really be fighting it with any form of bow. It drops the hide that comes from its individual kind of cave troll. And now we have the Myrmex Soldier. It's not the toughest Myrmex, but it's still a hassle early game whenever you're trying to raid one of these Myrmex places due to the amounts that are actually there. Okay, so I'll be getting all the items out. I'll be getting the Gorgon head and the two kind of dragons. Now the two kind of dragons all have different colors. They don't really change the strength of it. It's actually the tiers that change it. So you can have a tier 1, a tier 2, a tier 3 dragon, which give different varying levels of strength. Sorry about the background, the steam in the background. But when fighting an ice dragon, you should always try and use like a fire blood dragon sword, because they do more damage, or fire dragon steel instead of the ice dragon steel. This is because it actually does extra damage to the dragon and is much better for fighting it. When you kill one, you actually don't get the items right away, because what you have to do is actually right click it with an empty hand, and you'll eventually start having the items drop out. Now the fire dragon is basically the same, although the smaller ones tend to be much easier to fight. They fly away and dig down whenever weak enough, most oftenly, such as when a level 3 dragon gets hurt enough, it might eventually go down into the ground and become a level 4 or level 5 dragon. Same as how a level 1 or 2 won't really upgrade, but they just fly around after being attacked. The main one you're going to be finding around is a level 3, such as this one. And if you actually use a Gorgon head, I mentioned this in the second episode, being a weapon, it turns anything
like, that you use it on to completely stone. It can't really be attacked properly, and all arrows kind of just bounce off of it. Although certain modded weapons can definitely hit it if you have a correct mod, or a mod that the Ice and Fire mod wouldn't know. So for the last thing I'll be doing is actually using a dragon versus another dragon. You might have seen this before with Chosen Architect, where he's battling a dragon versus a dragon, or certain other YouTubers, but it's fun nonetheless. Why do you have one health? Okay, so I fixed it. Oh, so there's the Miramax Worker. Okay, so that's the Miramax Worker. It doesn't do much damage and it's pretty weak. Okay, so for riding a dragon, it has different keybinds for different things, such as flying, descending, and shooting fire are all different keys, which can all be found whenever you go into controls. They're under movement, if you're wondering. Now, this is a level 5 dragon, so it's the best that you can get. This isn't going to be every single dragon is going to be like this. Sorry about the excavate shape I have, or excavate on, so the keybind for it, for shooting fire, is the same as excavating. Okay, so let me place down a fire dragon. Not a level 1. Hopefully like a level 4, level 3. But if I ever fight a level 1 dragon, it actually doesn't drop any scales, which is an odd thing that they have. Instead, they only have like a skeleton, which is weird, but that's what they have. They only drop like a bone and like a skull. And normally whenever you fight a dragon with a dragon, the items won't burn, but in this case, the scales are not there. So with this ice dragon, since it's not flying, you can shoot it with fire. The fire attack doesn't do much damage, and it's mainly used for destruction purposes, but when fighting a dragon versus dragon, it's basically the only sort of attack that you have. There's no real, like, dash attack or any, like, biting attack, which the dragon normally has. So you have to kind of just fight it like this. This is gonna take a little while battling it because, well, the fire doesn't do that much damage when battling a fire dragon. So as you can see, after I killed it, it's still on fire, but you can still get the resources from it. It won't, like, burn up the weapons unless there's actually fire. It won't burn up the weapons or items that you get whenever you take the item from it, because it's not actually fire. Okay, so that's about it for the Ice and Fire mod. Eventually it's gonna update, but that won't be until a while. Anyway, bye!